Shabbat Shalom, everyone. It's so nice to see you and to be with you to end Shabbat together and to move into our haunted Havdalah. I'm Cantor Lisa Peicott, and I'm joined here by, has anyone seen the Rabbi? I think he'll
No.
be, what was that? Hello? Rabbi,
Hello.
can you, who are you?
I am always there, watching.
God, is that you?
No. It is not God. It
Oh
is
my
just a
gosh!
rabbi.
Rabbi Nickerson, Rabbi Joel! That was terrifying. Thank you for that. By the way,
Shabbat shalom.
wardrobe is on top of it tonight. I didn't realize that we had the same stylist, but you're looking pretty nice, and I'm look pretty nice myself.
You do. We're matching. It's perfect. I'm glad we got the
We
same
didn't plan
memo.
it.
Shabbat
Yeah,
shalom.
same memo. Shabbat shalom. How are you?
Doing well. Very, very well. Ooh, I like your creepy setup that you have
Oh,
there.
thank you. I've got my candles. The gang's all here. All of my haunted tchotchkes. We're ready to go. So one of
So,
the oh, go ahead.
no, please.
No, I just wanted to welcome everyone and to say Shabbat Shalom. Of course, it's still Shabbat until we do the ritual of Havdalah, which we're going to be joining together. But it's also, we can't pretend that it is the non-Jewish secular holiday of Halloween. So happy Halloween, everyone. I wanted to give a little background about Halloween. Halloween originated, if you didn't know, with the Celtic festival of Samhain, which took place 2,000 years ago in parts of Europe. The pagan festival was celebrated every October 31st, with people dressing up in costumes to scare off the ghosts that they believe would return to the earth with the onset of the winter months. There's actually the whole part that we do of trick-or-treating didn't originate with Samhain, but poor people would go and they would visit the houses of the rich and they would receive pastries called soul cakes in exchange for promises that they would pray for the homeowner's dead relatives to accompany these lost souls to their forever resting place. In Scotland and Ireland, meanwhile, young people would visit their neighbors' houses and sing a song, recite a poem, or perform some other kind of trick before receiving a treat of nuts, fruits, coins, not the crazy amount of candy that kids eat today. But it was in the 8th century that Pope Gregory III established All Saints' Day on November 1st and featured many of the pre-existing traditions of the Celtic festival of Samhain. So this evening before was known as All Hallows Eve, which we have come to know as Halloween. So my question is it pagan? Is it Christian? Is it secular? Is it now uniquely American? And is there a way that we can look at Halloween through a Jewish lens? So Rabbi Joel, can we look at Halloween through the lens of Judaism?
Of course we can. I feel like we can look at almost anything through a Jewish lens, but specifically this holiday for sure. Because if you were to look at Leviticus 19, for example, you would find that one of the commandments that's laid out in Leviticus is, do not turn to ghosts and do not inquire of familiar spirits to be defiled by them. I, the Lord, am your God. And then in Leviticus 20, the next chapter, and if any person turns to ghosts and familiar spirits and goes astray after them, I will set my face against that person and cut him off from his people. Now, what's interesting, if you look at some of the commentary, for example, looking at Rashi, you find that what they seem to be referencing here are all the other cultures that existed at the time, specifically the idea that there was this Canaanite god called Moloch or Molech, and this god, this was a very specific, weird idol worship. So this, according to the tradition, Molech was the name of the Canaanite god associated with child sacrifice through fire or war. And actually the rabbinic tradition depicted Moloch as this bronze statue heated with fire in which victims were thrown into this statue to be burned alive. But if we want to move into a more optimistic view of how we can understand this holiday, we can look at someone right there in the valley, Rabbi Ed Feinstein from Valley Beth Shalom. He gave a sermon once that has always stuck with me about the value of this holiday and how we can look at it through a Jewish lens. And if we want to see exactly what he said, "But something remarkable happens on Halloween, something I want my kids to see. On Halloween, we open our homes to one another. On Halloween, we come out from behind solid cord doors and deadbolt locks and electronic burglar alarms. The doorbell is met not with a gruff, 'Who's there?' and a suspicious eye in the peephole, but with a smile and sweets. On Halloween, and only on Halloween, we pretend we are a neighborhood again. Families from disparate backgrounds who share common civic values, making life together in a common space. If only once a year, I want my kids to see what it's like when fear subsides and people trust one another enough to open their doors." Think about the concept of our open doors in our tradition. Think about Passover. We open the door for Elijah. Halloween is another time where we open those doors. To think about it in that way, we can see it as a connection to one of the most important Jewish values, which is welcoming in the stranger, which is opening doors to our neighbors and to the rest of the world, that we are not isolationist. We have to be in relationship with the world in which we live, mostly a secular world. So for all these reasons, I think there are a lot of Jewish ways in which we can connect the holiday of Halloween with our Jewish identity. And if you have any ideas, do you make a connection to Judaism and Halloween? What are your ideas? Put them in the chat. We'd love to hear your interpretations of, if you were to find a Jewish understanding of this holiday of Halloween, which, as Cantor Lisa pointed out, has some very non-Jewish background to it. How do you see it? What's the connection for you? We'd love to hear your thoughts on that. But with that, we have to get to the end of Shabbat, because we're coming to the end of Shabbat, and we have to do something before we do that.
Lie, lie, la, 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 lie, 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 la, 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 lie, lie, la, la, lie, 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 la, la, lie, lie, la, lie, lie.
That was a fantastic introduction. I think that you should forever use that voice. That is the new Rabbi voice. But for real, we're going to bring in the conclusion of Shabbat with the ritual of Havdalah. I have Frankenstein here is helping to hold up my Havdalah candle. And we have a little spooky treat for our Havdalah blessings. Lie, 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 lie. Ya la lie, 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 ya la lie, ya la lie. Ya lie, la 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 lie, 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 la 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 lie, lie. Ya la lie, 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 ya la lie, ya la lie. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen borei peri hagafen yalalai yalai la 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 lai 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 la 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 lai lai yalalai lai 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 yalalai yalalai yalai la 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 lai 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 la 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 lai lai yalalai lai 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 yalalai yalalai Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei minei besamim borei minei besamim yalalai yalalai la 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 lai 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 la 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 lai lai Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Orei me'orei ha'esh Orei me'orei ha'esh Yadadai Yadadai la 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 Yadadai lai 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 Yadadai 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 la 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 lai 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 la 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 lai lai Yadadai lai 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 Yadadai Yadadai Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Hamavdil ben kodesh lechol Hamavdil ben kodesh lechol Hamavdil ben kodesh lechol Chatoteinu yimchol Zar'einu v'chazveinu yar bekachol והכוכבים בלילה שבוע טוב 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 A good week, a week of peace. May gladness reign and joy increase. A good week, a week of peace. May gladness reign and joy increase. Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu Hatishbi, Eliyahu, Eliyahu, Eliyahu Hagiladi, Bimhera veyamenu, Yavo Eleinu, Imashiach ben David, Imashiach ben David, Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu Hatishbi, Eliyahu, Eliyahu, Eliyahu Hagiladi. Sha-BOO-ah tov, everyone.
Sha-BOO-ah tov.
Sha-BOO-ah tov.
Yes.
First, there were the sounds of Shabbat. Then there was the taste of Shabbat that we hoped to hold on to as we move into the week. Then the smells. What do you smell tonight? Do you smell the burning candle? Do you smell spices?
I smell fear.
And then, fear, yes. Like the burning fire of that candle, which was extinguished by Shabbat. But no, Shabbat never goes away. It will be back next week.
I feel like we're going to have to take this away from you at some point, this microphone. This is amazing.
It is bad news for everyone.
It is, yeah. I can just imagine what your family's thinking right now.
Yeah, well, my kids have a good time with it as well. Before we go any further, we got some very nice thoughts, especially Claire Goldsmith had a good interpretation of how she links this holiday to her Jewish identity. The pumpkins on Halloween make us think a bit of Sukkot, an appreciation of the harvest, and the dressing up is reminiscent of Purim. Our tradition values dressing up and sometimes exploring alter egos or wishes and dreams, though that, I think, yes, very true. Very true indeed. Yeah. And then Melanie Alkov makes a connection also. She says, I can make a connection with the idea of visiting the sick. I used to work at UCLA Hospital in pediatrics, and the staff arranged beautiful Halloween parties for the children in the hospital. The kids were overjoyed. Wonderful. I love these. Wonderful. And then Merle said her connection was that when her daughter was a youth group advisor, the kids wanted to go trick-or-treating, so she told them they had to do a food drive. So they collected huge boxes of food and blew our neighbors away. So the idea of giving back and giving to others. So all these wonderful ways in which we can feel connected to this holiday. We wanted to move, before we hear some freaky, creepy stories, a few fun facts about this holiday, which you may or may not be aware of. The first, of course, is the idea, and as I urged some of our colleagues to go check out the Drunk History episode referring to this little piece of history. But in 1914, Elizabeth Krebs changed Halloween for our country. See, every year, young people all over her town in Kansas would come together and they would literally just destroy the town on Halloween, the evening of Halloween. They would just run rampant and destroy everything. But she decided that she was going to change that. So she planned a party for the entire town and all the youth of the town, and they all came together, and it changed how we celebrate Halloween ever since, right? So it led to the creation of Halloween parades, later, which transitioned in the 1930s to the idea of trick-or-treating, and this idea that Halloween could be a time where people could come together as opposed to trying to just destroy their towns. So that was one fun fact, that in 1914, Elizabeth Krebs completely transformed the trajectory of Halloween. It goes to show, as our tradition teaches, one person can change the world. Every person matters. You count. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Elizabeth Krebs.
Oh,
I had a Halloween parade outside of my house today. Some of the neighborhood kids who go to school together, like in the preschool, they're potted together, and so they see each other in a socially distanced way. But they did like a little parade down the street, like all like 6 feet apart from each other in their little costumes. Joey and I watched from the front steps. It was amazing to see, like,
so cute.
Our neighborhood that isn't normally, we know each other, but it's not the way that we've all gotten to like know each other during COVID, and especially with Halloween being so strange and for many people canceled the way that they originally wanted it to be, to see people become very unique and creative.
Love that. Well, you can't have Halloween or a parade if you don't have any candy. So I think we need to talk about candy. Another fun fact, by the way, as of this year, Halloween is the second largest commercial holiday in the country. It comes only after Christmas, and consumers spent approximately $9 billion on Halloween last year. $9 billion. It's a lot of candy and costumes. So if we're going to talk about candy, I think we have to talk about our favorite candies, right?
Yeah, what's your favorite
at this point,
candy?
Let us know what your favorite candy is.
Let us know what your favorite candy is.
Yeah. What is your favorite candy? For me, I happen to really love 100 Grand. I know it's not the easiest to find, but it is a delicious, as it says there. Wait, can you put that back up? Just to give a pitch for it. Chewy caramel, milk chocolate, and crispy crunchies. You can't go wrong with that. Highly recommend it. That's my favorite. What about you, Cantor, Lisa?
Can't go wrong with that. My favorite candy is either Reese's Peanut Butter Cups or Reese's Pieces. And Almond Joy, that one too. But the peanut butter chocolate, you can't really beat that.
I think you may be the only person I know who likes Almond Joy.
I literally just picked up a bag of Halloween candy from my mom, and I chose it specifically. She gave me 2 options of big bags, and I chose the one with the Almond Joy. Coconut, chocolate, a little crunch.
Yeah, I always feel like that's the one that's left behind. So I guess that's the benefit for you of loving Almond Joy.
That's those heart candies. That's those like Smarties. Those are the ones that are always left behind. The chalky
well,
ones.
let's talk about what we definitely agree on, and I assume everyone agrees on. There is one candy that should be taken off the market and no one should ever enjoy, and that is correct. Candy corn. needs to go. Has no place in this world.
Interestingly enough, I did services with Rabbi Eshel this morning. That is his favorite candy. He thinks it is the most underrated candy that exists.
Well, he also eats his hummus with ketchup, so which I know you
tried
say
that one, and it was actually it's like a tangy hummus.
Yeah. Okay.
But the candy corn, I can't get behind the candy corn.
Yeah, I haven't seen of all the comments that we've gotten in terms of people's favorite candies. Charlie Jasper actually likes candy corn. I feel like Charlie may be the only person besides Rabbi Eshel on the planet who enjoys candy corn. So good for you, Charlie. But everyone else seems to have avoided that. Nancy Jacobson is with you, Lisa.
Yeah, I see some fellow Almond Joy lovers.
Yeah, and your mom is getting very, defensive and wants to support your Almond Joy love. So, yes, yeah. Okay.
She does that.
Butterfinger, we got Butterfinger and Kit Kat and peanut M&Ms. And Reese's, of course, Reese's. So lots of good candy out there. But, by the way, did you know, speaking of candy corn, that candy corn was actually originally called chicken feed? Yeah. It kind of looks like chicken feed, I guess. And so the Golitz Confectionery Company sold boxes with a rooster on the front in order to appeal to America's agricultural roots. And that the recipe has gone basically unchanged since the 1880s. So maybe that's why it tastes so
it tastes that way.
Ancient. Yeah, it tastes that.
It tastes that way.
It has not changed very much. And finally, one more fun fact before we get to some stories, because let's get to some stories. Did you know that, and I just saw this, well, not tonight, because the sunset, by the way, the sunset was gorgeous tonight. It was all orange. It was a perfect Halloween sunset. But last night, when it was a clear night, I saw the full moon. This is the first full moon during Halloween in 19 years. They're pretty rare, actually, on Halloween. The last time there was a full moon was in 2001. And before that, it was 1955. And the next one isn't going to occur until 2039. That, in fact, in the 21st century, there will only be 6 full moons on October 31st. 2001, 2020, this year, 2039, 2058, 2077, and 2096. I'll be around for some of those, but not all of them. Yes. Okay, so now that we've shared some facts, it's time for us to move to some stories. The first one being a long time ago in the city of Prague, the Jews were under attack, as they have been in many places, let's be honest. But in this case, the priest Thaddeus was out to get the Jews. Rabbi Lowe, who was the rabbi of the city at the time, realized that he and the fellow Jews were not enough to protect themselves from these anti-Semites and all the people who were hoping to destroy the Jewish people. Again, a common theme that we have throughout our history and throughout some of our holidays. So Rabbi Lowe decided things had to change. He had to take steps that were unprecedented, that were spiritually awakening and incredible, majestic, magic. And the consequences were amazing. It was the year 1580. The Jews of Prague were at that time leading a thorny existence. The hand of the Catholic ecclesiastics weighed heavily upon them. One priest especially, Thaddeus by name. Rabbi Lowe therefore considered it necessary to have a conference with the ecclesiastics in order to convince them of the baseness of all those accusations against the Jews. But the fanatical priest Thaddeus continued to attempt mischief. Thaddeus strained every nerve to succeed in bringing forward a ritual murder charge against the Jews of Prague. Rabbi Lowe learned of this in time and directed a dream question to heaven, asking to be counseled as to the manner and means wherewith to combat this wicked foe. He received the following answer: "Make a golem of clay, and you will destroy the entire Jew-baiting company." Rabbi Loa sent for his son-in-law, Isaac ben Simson, and for his student, Jacob ben Chaim Sasson, and confided to them the mysterious manner in which he hoped to be able to make the golem. Rabbi Lo said, "I wish to make a golem, and I bespeak your collaboration because for this creative act the 4 elements, fire, water, air, and earth, are necessary. You, Isaac, are the element of fire. You, Jacob, are the element of water. I myself am air. Working together, we shall make out of the 4th element, earth, a golem." They formed out of clay the figure of a person, and the golem lay before them with his face turned toward heaven. It lay there like a dead body, without any movement. The clay body became red, like fire. The fire was extinguished, and water flowed through the clay body. Hair sprouted on its head, and nails appeared on the fingers and toes. Then Rabbi Lo himself walked once around the figure, placed in its mouth a piece of parchment inscribed with the name of God, and bowing to the east and to the west and the south and the north, all 3 recited together, "And he breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul." The golem opened his eyes and looked astonished about him. And Rabbi Lo said to him, "Stand up." And he stood up. Only the faculty of speech was lacking to him. At daybreak, 4 men went homeward. On the way, Rabbi Lo thus addressed the golem. "Know that we have formed you from a clod of earth. It will be thy task to protect the Jews from persecution. You shall be called Joseph. You, Joseph, must obey my commands." Joseph nodded in acceptance. The golem became the terror of the enemies of the Jews. Rabbi Lo used to order him to do nothing else on Sabbath but to be on guard and serve as a watcher. One Friday afternoon, Rabbi Lo forgot to give him the order for the next day. The want of employment made him awkward and wild. When the people saw this, they ran from him and cried, "Joseph Golem has gone mad!" The people were greatly terrified, and a report of the panic soon reached the Alteanu synagogue where Rabbi Lo was praying. Rabbi Lo rushed out, and without seeing the golem, called out into space, "Joseph, stop where you are!" And the people saw the golem at the place where he had happened to find himself that moment remain standing like a post. Rabbi Lo sent for his son-in-law, Rabbi Yitzhak, the priest, and his disciple Jacob Sasson, the Levite, those who had participated in the creation of the golem. And he said to them, "We will therefore destroy the golem." It was on Lag BaOmer, the year 1593. They ascended to the top of the Alteanu synagogue, the assistant, Abraham Chaim, walking in advance with 2 burning candles. The 3 men began their work, the annihilation of the golem. In the morning, news spread in the Jewish ghetto that Joseph Golem had disappeared from the town during the night. Rabbi Lo had it announced in all synagogues and houses of prayer that it was strictly forbidden for anybody to mount to the top of the Alteanu synagogue. Furthermore, the remains of torn prayer books and other sacred things were no longer to be stored there. The story of the golem. It's still out there. Actually, if you still go to that synagogue in Prague, it's thought that you can still find remains of the golem. Anyway, on that note, let's transition to some of the other ghouls and goblins associated with our tradition, shall we? What do you think, Cantor Lisa?
I'm in the mood. I like it. Let's do it.
Let's do it. The rabbis had no problem thinking about demons. And actually, they went so far as to talk about demons in the Talmud itself. And this is what they wrote.
It has been taught, Abba Benjamin says, if the eye had the power to see them, no creature could endure the demons. Abaye says,
They are more numerous than we are, and they surround us like the ridge around a field. Rabbi Huna says,
Every one among us has 1,000 on his left hand and 10,000 on his right hand. Rabbi says,
the crushing of the crowd in the Kala lectures comes from them. Fatigue in the knees comes from them. The wearing out of the clothes of the scholars is due to their rubbing against them.
The bruising of the feet comes from them. Rarely does the Talmudic literature go into detail about exactly how demons and magical creatures come into being, or whether they are really independent beings out there, or merely psychological realities. If the latter, of course, then we today can perhaps understand this foreign-sounding discourse. After all, who among us has not been plagued by demons in their work or sexual life? As in the source above, demons could be seen as anything that causes decay, pain, and the depletion of life energy. If one wants to discover them, let him take sifted ashes and sprinkle around his bed, and in the morning he will see something like the footprints of a rooster.
Nothing scarier than the footprints of a rooster in the morning. So you can see that the rabbis believed that we were surrounded by demons at all times, always watching us, tempting us. But that's not all. Cantor Lisa, what else?
We not only find those stories in the Talmud, we also find stories of demons in the Midrash. The rabbis attempt to understand why horrible things happen in this world. And one of the things that they seek to explain is the confusing fact that in Genesis, in the creation story, there are two stories of creation. So in Genesis Rabbah, the rabbis have to explain why there are two different stories. And they come up with a midrash that Adam had a first wife, and her name was Lilith. God created a mate for Adam, but Adam said that she had to be subservient and lay beneath him. Lilith protested, saying that she was made by the same creator. We are equal, male and female. And so she decides to run away. Adam complains to God, and God sends 3 angels after to bring her back. Lilith refuses to return. She refuses to be subservient to Adam. And her punishment is that if she stays away, that 100 children will die every day because of her, except the ones that have the sign, the amulet of those 3 angels. Those she had no control over. So in the rabbinic mindset, Lilith becomes the demon, the scapegoat for why horrible things happen in this world, why infants die, why women have miscarriages, why marriages fall apart. In their imagination, the cause is Lilith and her demons lurking behind the scenes, stealing babies in the middle of the night. I don't know if anyone received a red ribbon for their crib when they had a baby. But the reason behind this is the red ribbon is supposed to be a sign of one of those amulets so that Lilith can pass over the crib and leave your children undisturbed. But the rabbis imagined that in every bad circumstance, that it's Adam's spurned wife, that first wife of Lilith, that's constantly lurking within the shadows. Rabbi Joel, do you have another one?
It wasn't just birds and bees and beautiful creatures created during the creation of the world. No. There was another creature that was also created at the beginning, supposedly on the 5th day, according to the Midrash. And that would be the Leviathan. Now, the Leviathan had a partner on land. It was called the Behemoth, or the Behemoth. But the Leviathan is special. It comes from the root to coil, to this idea of it was a snake-like creature. But more than what it does when it survives and lives now is what's going to happen in the Messianic era. Oh, that's where it gets really weird. According to the Midrash, when the Messianic time comes, that is when God will slay the Leviathan and all the people who have made it to the Messianic era will enjoy a feast of Leviathan meat. But that's not all. Cantor Lisa, what else does our tradition teach us?
So now we're going to travel a little bit further into the Middle Ages, into Europe. In Jewish mythology, a dybbuk, taken from the Hebrew verb dabak, which means to cling to or adhere to, is a malicious spirit that is believed to be dislocated from the heavenly world and instead wanders around the earth, hovering around the earth, waiting to find a host that it can possess. Many times these demons have something that they did wrong in their lifetime, and they need to undo the wrong in order to move on from the spiritual realm. The term dybbuk derived from the Hebrew expression of ruach hamedabek, the spirit who cleaves to, and it was first used in 18th century Europe. Previously, this term ruach ra, evil spirit, was used for designating the deceased soul. But there were a number of Hasidism who actually believed, and there's actual accounts in Prague in the 15th century, that there were exorcisms, Jewish exorcisms of people who had been possessed by these dybbuks. There was a play by S. Ansky, which was turned into a Yiddish silent film that's called The Dybbuk. And it's about a young girl who on her wedding night is possessed by the dead spirit of an admirer from her past. And she has to fight the demons. We're watching a clip of this right now. This is the dance of death in which that dybbuk is about to enter into her soul. And by the end of the movie, there has to be a literal exorcism. So I was so fascinated by this idea of the dybbuk. And if you search online, there's actual things called dybbuk boxes, and they're thought to hold the spirits of the deceased. So I got this box off of Amazon out of curiosity. And if you look really closely, you can see the words of the Shema written. Just kidding, I couldn't resist that one. But that's the story of the dybbuk. Rabbi Joel, do we have some more frightful tales?
A few weeks ago in the Torah, we learned about a special creature. A creature that existed before the flood. The Nephilim. In early Genesis, right before the story of Noah and the flood, a race of giants is said to have dwelt in the Canaanite land. And these sons of God, these divine angelic beings, took mortal wives. As it says in Genesis 6:4, it was then and later too that the Nephilim appeared on earth when the divine beings cohabitated with the daughters of men who bore them offspring. They were the heroes of old, the men of renown. And in apocryphal writings of the Second Temple period, this narrative was elaborated and reinterpreted, and the idea was that the angels were depicted as rebels against God, and they were lured to the charms of women, of course, and they fell and defiled the Nephal. Nephilim is to fall, Nephal. They defiled their heavenly purity and introduced all manners of sinfulness onto the earth, especially with the ways in which they were interacting with the females on the earth. And so their giant offspring were wicked and violent. And according to these apocryphal texts, the flood came about because of their sinfulness. It's because of the Nephilim that the flood actually happened. But therefore God wanted to destroy the world, get rid of the Nephilim, and start all over again. So that's the story of the Nephilim.
And last but not least, we have one of my favorite stories from the canon of the Hebrew Bible. From the book of 1 Samuel, we have Saul and the Witch of Endor. In the book of 1 Samuel, chapter 28, Saul, the first king of Israel, seeks the help of a sorceress from the land of Endor to conjure up the dead spirit of his great mentor, the prophet Samuel. With the younger and stronger David coming up in the ranks behind him, an upcoming battle with the Philistines, Saul felt unsure and lacked the confidence he needed, and so, in desperation, he turned to the dark arts. On a dark, dark night, much like tonight, King Saul said to his men, "Find me a sorceress, that I may go to her and inquire of her." Even though God had clearly commanded his people never to consult a witch or a sorcerer, Saul was desperate and thought little of God's commandments. His servants went out and found a woman, a witch, in the nearby woods of the land of Endor, who was known to raise the dead from their graves. In the dead of night, the king took off his kingly garments and disguised himself and went to see the witch of Endor himself. Saul approached the medium. "Consult a spirit for me, and bring up for me the one whom I name to you." The witch replied, "Surely you know what King Saul has done, how he has cut off the mediums and the wizards from the land. So why would you try to cause me to die?" Saul replied, "I swear to you, God will not punish you. I swear to you." "Whom shall I bring up for you?" "Samuel." The witch went through her spells and enchantments until a figure of a man wrapped in cloaks appeared before Saul. The witch cried out, realizing that she had risen from the dead, the great prophet Samuel. She cried out in a loud voice, "Why have you deceived me? You are Saul!" The shadowy figure walked towards the witch of Endor, saying, "Don't be afraid." Saul, afraid, scrambling and unable to see in the darkness. "What do you see?" The woman replied, I see an old man coming up. He is wrapped in a robe." Saul fell upon the ground, too afraid to show his face to Samuel. "I am in great distress. The Philistines are warring against me, and God has turned away from me and answers me no more." The shadowy figure of Samuel snapped back, "Why are you bothering me? You didn't listen to me when I was alive. You've never listened to God. Why are you bothering me now? Your kingdom will be given to David. Israel will be defeated by the Philistines, and come tomorrow, your sons will be with me." Saul, terrified of Samuel's words, fell to the ground, ashamed, and began to weep as the shadowy figure disappeared into the air. The following day, the battle began, and both of Saul's sons were killed by the Philistine army, just as Saul and the witch had predicted. Seeing the destruction of his family and his soldiers, and the loss of Israel's battle, the cursed and now wounded King Saul fell upon his sword and took his own life.
The story of King Saul and the Witch of Endor is scary as can be.
You know what that reminds me of?
Because that witch.
It reminds me of Werewolf Bar Mitzvah, the little auto-tune. I saw someone made, I think it was Rabbi Eshel made a reference to Werewolf Bar Mitzvah. You gotta do it.
Werewolf Bar Mitzvah, spooky, scary. Boys becoming men, men becoming wolves.
That'll never get old.
Scary.
Scary. The Witch of Endor is here.
Well, you can always have a career in voiceover. That's for sure.
Okay.
Definitely.
I did not
okay.
let that go off just now, and my little lantern just went off.
Freaky. Well, all this talk about demons and Lilith and Dybbuk and Leviathan and the Golem and the Witch of Endor. Our tradition has enough material to scare anyone who really wants it. And that, I think, is one of the most important things that we can learn from our haunted Havdalah tonight. See, we don't need to only look to the secular world to be inspired by the ghouls and ghosts and demons. No, we only have to look at our own tradition. Because the wisdom of Judaism is broad, it's vast. It doesn't just cover the beautiful, serene moments of tradition and history. No, it goes into the darkness, the depths of fear and despair. So what can we learn today? Well, what I'm taking away is that in a time where we are so fearful, and let's be honest, all the things I've heard as we're leading up to Tuesday's election, this is a time of fear, right? There are a lot of people afraid. And yet, as we have told you with all of these stories from our own tradition, we have been a people who have dealt with fear and persecution for thousands and thousands of years. We have found all kinds of ways of dealing with that insecurity and that fear. And one of those is to come up with these stories about these ghouls and the goblins. But you know what? In every single case, there's a power in which we can overcome that fear. We have the power over that. That is one of the most important things about being Jewish, is this idea of hope. In the face of fear, when there is a mystery about what could come in front of us and what's in the future, we can always rely on this sense of hope that there are no demons or ghouls big enough to squelch the fire and passion of the Jewish people. That's what I'm taking from Halloween this year. That's what I'm taking from this time of year where we are fearful for our country. We are all in a state of insecurity and utziness. That's what I'm focusing on.
Amen. Beautiful.
Well, with that,
I mean,
I could do an auto tune. I can do an auto tune. Oh, say shalom.
We're gonna
or we
take
could
a guy like, oh, say shalom, like that.
Oh, say shalom. Oh, say shalom bimromav. Oh, yeah, say shalom aleinu. Ve'al kol Yisrael. V'imru, imru, amen. Yaseh shalom.
Yaseh shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom. Yaseh shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael.
Yaseh shalom. Yaseh shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom. Yaseh shalom. Shalom aleinu
ve'al kol Yisrael.
That's it. I quit. Auto-tune Cantor is in the house.
Sha-BOO-ah tov.
Sha-BOO-ah tov, everyone.
Thank you to Tess and Jessica for making all of this possible, for everything behind the scenes, and for their joy and everything that they bring. So thank you to the two of them.
Thank you guys. And thank you guys for watching and spending your Halloween with us on Facebook.
Cantor Lisa, as always, a pleasure.
Always a pleasure. Nice shirt.
Sha-BOO-ah tov.
Sha-BOO-ah tov, everyone. Have a great week.
I got you now.